Tejaswini. Awesome. A quick introduction of and reintroduction of myself for people who are joining for the first time. My name is Priyanka. I'm the Evidence Hub Manager at the Global Schools Forum. I'm joining from Delhi, India. I'm also joined by my colleague Tejaswini today, who is supporting here with tech today. So thank you everyone for making the time to join the session today. Today we'll be hearing from Children on the Edge and BRAC Uganda, and we'll be delving deeper into their play-oriented ECED programs for children in refugee camps that they work in. A quick sort of introduction of our presenters itself. We have Children on the Edge with us, which is a child rights organization working across Bangladesh, India, Uganda, Myanmar, and Lebanon. We have Sarah, International Education Specialist from Children on the Edge with us, who will present about the cluster learning approach in the Kyakatu refugee camp in Uganda. Sarah has been working at Children on the Edge for over 10 years and is responsible for the development of their education program. Our second presentation will be by BRAC, which is a leading nonprofit organization working across 10 countries in Asia and Africa on critical issues of poverty, illiteracy, social injustice, and diseases. We have Joseph, who's project manager from BRAC Uganda, who will present about the humanitarian play lab model in Rhino and Imwempi refugee settlements in Uganda. Thank you, Sarah and Joseph, for planning and facilitating this session for the community today. Before we get into the presentations itself, a quick sort of overview of what the agenda would look like. So first, we'll do a quick recap of sort of the COP series and about GSF and what our intention is with the Evidence Hub and these COP sessions. Second, then in continuation of one of our objectives of the COP, which is to foster connections, we will then do another sort of quick activity to get to know each other, hopefully with a different group this time from the one that you interacted with last time. We will then move into the presentations itself and then sort of open it up for Q&A. And then we'll end with a short sort of reflection activity and discuss some next steps. I'll quickly pause here in case anyone has any questions or would like to add anything to the agenda. Awesome. So seems like we can move on. A little bit about GSF for anyone who's joining the presentation and the COP series for the first time. GSF is a collaborative community of non-state organizations that are working to improve education at scale for underserved children in low and middle income countries. Currently, we have 115 organizations that are working across 60 countries, impacting about 21 million children. Within this network, we have a growing community of ECED practitioners, many of whom are already present on the call today. We are running a 6-session COP on dual generation approaches. Our first session was about grounding us in the theory of 2Gen. Dr. Joan Lombardi led us through this very insightful session. If you missed that session and would like to get a sense of what the discussion looked like and the key takeaways, please reach out to me and I will share the recording and the key takeaways that were from the discussion. In today's session, which is our second session, we will be focusing on the child-facing intervention and understanding play-oriented ECED programs for children in refugee camps. In the coming 2 sessions, we will be discussing about livelihood interventions and programming examples for caregivers. The session post that will focus on measurement approaches, and then we will end with a session on enabling factors like financing and coordination to actually scale dual generation approaches. Awesome. So I think now we can move on with the icebreaker activity and get to know each other a little bit better. Just very quickly on that, in this activity, what we'll do is we'll break out into groups of 3 for about 10 minutes. Within our group, we'll take a moment to just introduce ourselves. As part of your introduction, also describe the ECD intervention that you're working in. If it does incorporate, briefly share about your approach with the group. Also, the third point is we want you to discuss a couple of questions, burning questions that you have as a group regarding play-oriented ECD in humanitarian context that you'd like to get addressed through the session. Particularly for the third piece, please take a minute or two in the end to type out your 1 to 2 questions as a group. We'll then come back and post it on the chat. This will help the group gain some insights on what are the kind of challenges we are collectively facing as a group and the questions we have on this topic. It will also offer the group an opportunity to just contribute their perspective in response to some of your questions if they already have experience to it. We'll give you a time check closer to sort of 7 minutes to let you know when you should be starting to type out your questions, which we'll then come back and share with the larger group. Yeah, so I think we're ready to go with this. Tejaswini is going to help us here and break us out into groups of 3 for 10 minutes, and we'll give you reminders through your time so you're on track with some of these questions that we left the answers to.
Keep opening all the breakout rooms.
I think we have a few people come back. We'll wait for everyone else to join us back to the main room. I think we're waiting for a couple more people to come back to the main room. Awesome. I think as we're waiting, we can just take some time now to post the questions that you discussed in your groups and post it on the chat. We can also have a couple of groups come off mute and elaborate on their questions if that is possible from where you're joining. I'll give you all like 30 seconds more to just post your responses on the chat. For people who just came back to the main room, we're just typing out the questions that we discussed within our groups, specifically regarding play-based ECD that we'd like to highlight for the group. You can take a couple of seconds to draft those questions and post it on the Zoom chat here. We have one from Kanupriya's team, which is around how do you shift beliefs about play so that providers and parents can start to think of play as learning, and how do you measure play learning beliefs? That's a great question. Would love to urge everyone to just go through everyone else's questions. And if this is something that resonates with you, feel free to give it a thumbs up. And if anyone would like to go off mute and also elaborate on their questions, please feel free to do so. I think we're waiting on one more group and for them to post their questions. The other question that we have is around from Priyanka and Ishwar's team, which is around how can we effectively address asylum seekers in addition to refugees with access to quality play-based learning opportunities in circumstances where they may not yet have access to services. Really important questions there. We have another question around what difficulties have others faced when implementing quality play-based learning. Awesome. I think we've had responses from all the groups here, so we can move forward. If for others, if you have answers to any of these questions, feel free to use this space to give your responses and your experiences to some of these questions, but also please feel free to connect individually with the groups who've raised these questions to share your experiences. We'd also try our best to answer some of these questions, or at least have initial discussion around some of these questions around what is it that we can do and begin to solve some of these challenges and questions that we have around these themes. So we'll also be mindful within this session to address some of those. In the interest of time, I think we can now move forward and move on to the presentations itself. We will first start with the presentation by Children on the Edge. And on this note, I'm just going to hand it over to Sarah to talk a little bit more about her program.
Thanks, Priyanka. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak. It really is an honour to be able to talk about our work and share what we've learnt, and also to hear some of your experiences. I'm most looking forward to that. Are you able to go to the next slide? Thank you. So as Priyanka already mentioned, I'm going to talk about our cluster learning model in Chakatu refugee settlement in Uganda. Next slide. Yeah, thank you. So to start with, the core components of our model are the first one, accessibility, play-based and child-centered learning, parent and family engagement, unique caregiver training, true community ownership, and sustainability. And I'm going to talk through all of those components as we go along. Next slide, please. Sorry in advance, I'm not actually used to speaking quite so much. I'd normally be a bit more interactive, but yes, let's go. So Uganda has an open door policy for all refugees. It's the largest host in Africa with over 1.5 million refugees. Refugees are given land and they're allowed to work and access national services such as schools, alongside receiving UNHCR support. However, when we were invited into the settlement in 2018, we found that only 13% of children aged 3 to 6 were able to access early childhood education. Communities told us that the main barriers to accessing the provision was the lack of provision, to start with. The centres that were there were really far away and they were difficult to get to. The settlement is sprawling and the terrain is really difficult to navigate. Families, most of them dealing with a huge amount of trauma, were scared to leave their young children so far from home with people that they didn't know. There were expensive fees and or other cost implications, such as uniforms and books, that were a requirement for attending. Most are overcrowded, and as a result, there is poor quality teaching and learning with a reliance on rote learning. Young children need strong relationships with their teachers or caregivers in order to learn, and this level of overcrowding just does not facilitate this. And the last one is that in some cases, parents just were not aware of the benefits of early childhood education. They were waiting for children to turn school age for them to enroll them in a primary school. They just weren't aware of early childhood education. Next slide, please. So we found that communities had already started to build their own centres. You can see this one on the top left. They requested support with refurbishment, building materials and teacher training. Then COVID hit. So Uganda suffered through one of the world's longest education lockdowns, with all centres and schools closed for 83 weeks. This enabled us to pivot. So communities began providing home learning for children in small groups close to their homes. When the centres reopened, we genuinely expected children to go back to the centres and to close our programme down. But communities told us that our programme had significantly increased access for the most vulnerable, and those actually still couldn't access the centres. So the cluster learning programme was born. We found, sorry, I'm back on the other one. Thank you. We found that providing education and play opportunities close to children's homes meant that even the most vulnerable children could attend. Parents are close by, they know the teachers, they know the other children, and they feel safe leaving their child there. Teachers are respected and loved members of the community. So this had a particular impact on children with disabilities, who were encouraged and supported to take part. Teachers are currently reporting 161 children with disabilities are regularly attending, which is a huge number for us. In 5 zones across the settlement, we've gone from 13% of children accessing early childhood education in our first needs assessment done in 2018 to 25% prior to the COVID lockdown in the refurbished centres that we help the communities to do. And now 71% of those children are able to access early childhood education through our cluster learning programme. So our model has also helped to reduce overcrowding in the learning centres, thus improving the quality of service provision outside of our programme. It's also increased access to primary school when children turn 6. So one head teacher reported that we registered a bigger number of primary 1 learners than we've ever enrolled in the last 3 years. The impact Children on the Edge Africa has created is huge and unexpected. Next slide, please. So the second component of our model is play-based learning. Play-based and child-centered learning is terminology that we hear as practitioners all the time. We all know the theory, but what does this look like in our context? Firstly, we aim for a low teacher-to-child ratio of 1 to 15, meaning that teachers have the opportunity to get to know and build really strong relationships with every single child in their care. I really believe this is the foundational block to learning and play. Children take part in both teacher and child-led activities, which are interactive and fun, use locally sourced and easily accessible and mostly free materials, which are linked to the Ugandan framework. Most importantly, we strive to put even the youngest children at the heart of our programme. So it's about listening to and understanding their needs, supporting them to express themselves. We work on social and emotional development, build their confidence and give them a voice, preparing them for their very uncertain future. But how do we actually do it? Next slide, please. So implementation of play-based learning has been extremely difficult. And after nearly 5 years, I think we are just about starting to get it right. It's not something that we thought we were experts at. We really had to work at it. So we recently developed a new curriculum and pedagogy after finding that much of the teaching style was slipping back into rote learning. We thought we were getting somewhere and then it would slip back and you'd go back and visit and it would be rote learning again. So initially, even our teachers, our teacher trainers, and even our local staff team really struggled to understand what we meant when we talked about play-based and child-centered learning methodologies. So we went back to the drawing board. We went back to the communities themselves. We gathered all of our 200 teachers, our teacher trainers, and all of our staff, and we asked them to play for a day. This was a brilliant, brilliant day. The teachers showed us local African games. They sang songs, they danced, they made small vehicles and dolls out of whatever they could find. They played board games, skipping games. They told us local cultural stories. It was such a lovely day. And all of these activities and play activities that the communities had come up with by themselves formed the base of our new curriculum. So our teacher trainers then sat with us and they worked with us to come up with relevant weekly themes. They selected storybooks, they made up transition songs, and they gathered resources that they could use to create something we call learning stations. I'll talk about those a bit more later, which extend children's learning through play. So the teachers, the teacher trainers, the communities, they have ownership of what they're teaching. So we introduced a new methodology, play-based learning, but because of the development process we went through and the time we took to do it, it's now something that's really embedded within the culture and the context in which they live and work, and I believe is the key to the success of its implementation. Next slide. So teachers are all given a workbook, and there's a different one per term, and these include bite-sized lessons for each day that they teach. The planning is done for them, so they are free to focus on building strong relationships with the children, getting to know them and supporting them on their individual learning and development journeys. So they have morning play, followed by a welcome circle, and the sessions are then broken into 4 main sections, all about me, physical fun, building my brain, and then story time, and then a farewell circle at the end. So when the children arrive, they are able to spend half an hour playing. This is a chance for the teacher to check in with each child. So this might include supporting them to wash their hands, wash their face. They might pay them a compliment or ask them how their evening or their weekend was. It's time when they arrive at the cluster groups, it's time for them to play. We're starting as we mean to go on, having those conversations and building those relationships. In each of those main 4 sections that you can see, they usually do a 10-minute interactive teacher-led activity, followed by 30 minutes or so of free play at the learning stations. So what are the learning stations? Next slide, please. So the learning stations is a concept that we developed after being asked multiple times, how do we facilitate free play with no resources? We don't have any toys. We don't have things for the children to play with. How are we supposed to initiate free play? This was a huge stumbling block for our teachers. So we created the concept of learning stations. So learning stations are loosely linked to the topics. So one week we might have a shape one, the next week we might have a role play station. And we've also included targeted free play, such as fine motor skills. So we have weaving things, we have sticks, water, leaves, chalks, local paper beads, that children can work on their fine motor skills. We have construction, and depending where the children are at and what they need further support or practice with. So we worked with our teacher trainers to create these learning stations using locally sourced materials which are free where possible. So in the picture here, you can see a commonly used washing up bowl, which all parents have. So a parent will bring one with them in the morning. And they use water. This one's got water, bottle tops and leaves. And then next to it, there's another one you can just about see with some mud and some containers to fill and empty. Other things that we use are sticks, mud. If you make that mud, you can see they're wet. They use it as clay. Any clean, used, recyclable material containers, sand, stones, seeds, bottle tops, leaves, fabric scraps, all things that you wouldn't necessarily consider to be learning materials, but which they can find freely around their environment. And teachers also then create number cards from waste cardboard or plastic sheeting, letters, sound cards, things like that. And we do also provide storybooks. So 4 stations are set up simultaneously and stay the same for at least a week. And then children can choose what they want to play with and how they play with it. So I think in a very low resource setting, it's the most effective way of achieving targeted free play. The next slide, please. So another ongoing question that we've been having is, how do we monitor play? So how do we assess that children are learning and developing, and that our programme in particular is supporting them to do this? So we started using some existing international assessment tools, which we just found incredibly frustrating. They were really difficult to use. So about a year ago, we started working really closely with the incredible organisation Learn to Play, Botswana, who were having the same challenges we were having. And together we created a new play-based programme assessment tool. So this tool enables us to assess and observe children in the same way that they learn, through play, with their friends in a group, giving children the confidence and security to express themselves, to demonstrate where they're at on their own totally unique learning journey. We assess development of social and emotional skills, imagination and creativity, language development, fine and gross motor skills, and cognitive development. This understanding of how children are developing within our programme, it also tells us which areas of the curriculum are working or are really effective and which areas need improvement. We also then assess the programme itself. We observe teaching and learning, safety, child protection, accessibility, inclusivity, a long list of programme assessment outcomes. in particular, relationships between adults and children with their peers. So these two tools together enable us to create a program action plan, which gives clear and simple steps towards improving the program, ensuring more play and child-led learning happens, and that children are given the best possible opportunities in which they can learn and develop. So we piloted this tool in November last year in Uganda and Botswana, and we're currently working with Chichester University and a panel of early childhood experts to evaluate and verify its effectiveness. We are still in the early stages of doing this, but we hope to have the tool ready for use and to share with others for use in a larger pilot by the end of the year. Since using this tool, we have made significant changes to areas of our curriculum to ensure they better fit for purpose. Back to our key components. Next slide, please. So our third component of the programme is family and parent engagement. So incredibly important to achieve cluster learning, to achieve our outcomes. So cluster learning only takes place 3 mornings a week. The rest of the time they are in their home environments with their families. We had to find a way to help them to continue to develop and learn when they're not with us. We tried many different ways of engaging parents. We know that children learn best when they experience something for themselves, and so do parents. So we encourage parents to attend the cluster learning sessions with their children when they can, so they can see and experience play for themselves. We share snippets of information about child development and show them simple and fun activities they can do at home. And thanks again to Learn to Play, we made sure that we show them the connections between play and learning. So we don't ever just give them a play activity. We will tell them how that connects to the learning and development of their child. So through this, we are empowering parents to understand the benefits of an early childhood education. We found that they've gained confidence to continue offering play opportunities at home. And one quote we had from a focus group discussion, you can see on your screen there, which I absolutely love, which is parents reported finding joy and peace and a reduction in stress levels when playing, singing and dancing with their children. So there's this belief that play is for children, but through this program and through engaging with parents, we found that it actually has a positive impact on the parents too. Parents who have been through and experienced so much in their lives. They found that play has also helped them. Another really unexpected twist for us is that evidence from focus group discussion showed us that our program has improved children's relationships with their fathers. So in this picture here, you can see 3 fathers sat with this group of children reading stories. Fathers are taking an active role in their children's education, and in one of our areas, we now have more fathers attending engagement sessions than mothers, which for us is mostly unheard of in the early years sector. So that's been a huge unexpected outcome that we're really proud of. Next slide, please. So in addition, as parents see the impact the programme is having on their children, they have been motivated to start practically providing for the programme. Recent successes you can see on your screen. So parents have built 10 latrines with 10 more in progress. 7 study areas have obtained land from the government and are starting to build their own shelters. Parents fetch water so children can drink and wash every day. And many parents provide snacks. And in one area, they even planted maize for the children to eat, supporting their learning and development. Next slide, please. Our next component, component 4, is our unique approach to teacher training. So rather than just delivering 2 weeks of teacher training and leaving them to it, ours is very much an in-service process. So our teachers are refugees. They're members of the local community in which they teach, and most of them are parents themselves. So they are taught in an in-service manner over the course of 9 months. They start as teaching assistants and progress to have their own class. They are offered support and ongoing mentoring to ensure they are able to thrive. Then what happens is the best teachers can progress onto teacher trainers, or we call them TOTS. They receive additional training and mentoring, and we prepare them to be responsible for training hundreds more teachers long after we have left. So we do not just provide a service, but we are ensuring that it can continue long after we've gone. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the next component is true community ownership. So we believe that the real key to the success of the programme is true community ownership, right from the very beginning. So needs assessments and our experiences so far showed that parents already had the drive to try and educate and provide safe spaces for their children so they could work. We supported this by establishing and training local management committees. These are formed of passionate parents who are now fully responsible for the management of the cluster groups. So they follow up safeguarding concerns, they advocate for inclusivity, they deliver disability training. They monitor attendance and conduct home visits, but most importantly, they decide what the funding they raise from their own communities is spent on in their cluster groups. So as a result, every cluster group looks different, but most are thriving and led by groups of invested parents. So as a result, local management structures are in place, local people are trained as teacher trainers, and parents are trained as teachers. The only remaining challenge for true local ownership for us is teacher salaries. Next slide, please. So for us, teacher salaries were the biggest stumbling block towards achieving sustainability, but it also holds the biggest risk. Once our funding stream ends and we no longer cover salary costs, will all the teachers move on? The programme will completely disintegrate. So after many, many different iterations, our teachers are now given a small stipend for the first year while they're training. They are also given loan and intensive business skills training, and they decide what they want to spend their money on, and we support them to achieve it. In addition, parents from those communities are invited to set up savings groups where they can access business and savings training and support. Groups are encouraged to support the cluster programme with a minimum amount from that shared savings pot, which contributes towards the cost of the teacher resources and equipment, which is distributed by the management committee. The money that is generated from these small economies goes back into the community, improving children's access to education. So on the right of your screen, you can see Martha. She was one of our teachers, and she also has a sewing business. So she purchased a sewing machine with her loan, and she absolutely loves that during a usual week, she spends 3 days teaching, and she spends 2 days tailoring and making clothes. And for her, she gets to do 2 things that she's incredibly passionate about: the joy of being with young children and also the joy of tailoring, making her clothes and providing for others. So for her, she feels like she has the best of both worlds. Next slide. One of the most unique aspects of our programme in a humanitarian setting is that it is inherently sustainable. We believe that it's sustainable for the following 4 reasons. Communities and parents own it. They invest their savings and resources into it. They are proud of what they have achieved and they are motivated to continue. That we use existing structures, people's homes and outdoor spaces, which reduces expensive construction, maintenance or rental costs. By investing in training the best teachers to become teacher trainers, we've created a sustainable system where teacher trainers continue to train hundreds more teachers long after we've left. And then the last one is the saving systems in lieu of expensive, unsustainable salaries. We believe that these elements reduce reliance on short-term humanitarian aid. It ensures that refugee communities can provide education for their children long into the future. And then I just have a quick video I can share with you. It brings the programme to life a little bit before I talk to you about the future plans.
Yeah, is it okay, Sarah, if we just share the video in the takeaways email, just to make sure that we're ending on time?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. That's fine. Did you want to just...
I
yeah, perfect.
I can share it with everyone after the meeting.
Great, thank you. So future plans for the model. We've codified it. We've written up a comprehensive implementation plan and teacher training manuals, which we are currently using to scale up into the next 5 zones. We are aiming to reach all out of school children by the start of 2025. So we are currently reaching 5,000 children, and we aim to reach 10,000 by the start of 2025. Then who knows, really? We have been approached to see if we want to test the model in a community setting in Uganda. It would also be interesting to see if it could work in other refugee contexts around the world. For me, I would love to see the situation in the DRC stabilise. Then perhaps some of our teacher trainers might return home and we can start implementing the model there. That feels like the most organic route. But stabilising a country is probably easier said than done. So yes, that's it. There's you can scan the QR code there, which takes you to our website if you want to find out more information about our programme. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Sarah, for the detailed overview. Maybe we can take one or two quick questions now before we head on to Brag's presentation, and then we also have time after Brag's presentation for just more detailed Q&A. So if there's any burning questions right now, this is your moment.
I can ask one. This is really commendable. It's amazing the journey which you've narrated, Sarah. Sarah, how did you end up partnering with Learning to Play? How did that come about? If you can share a bit about that.
With Learn to Play, I can't even remember how we started, how we met. But we met and they delivered some training on play for us in Uganda. So they went out and saw our program and delivered some training for us. And then just ongoing conversations off the back of that. Priyanka, she's also called Priyanka at Learn to Play, met and got on well. So it's just been an ongoing communication, ongoing relationship that we've been building. We've met a number of times, and we just realized that although our programs are very different, we were struggling with many of the same challenges. So it's been an absolute privilege to be able to learn from them and work together.
Thank you, Ajay, for the question. Thank you, Sarah. Maybe we can move on to Brag's presentation. I'll hand it over to Joseph, and then we also have time post that to just ask our questions. So Joseph, over to you. I'll stop my screen share so you can present your deck.
Yes, thank you so much, Priyanka, and thanks to our previous speaker. Let me try to share my screen. Share on Teams. Oh. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much. Joseph is my name once again. I work with BRAC Uganda as a project manager. If my network breaks, sorry, I'm actually right now in West Nile. I've just returned from the field. But the picture you're seeing is one of our play labs that we've constructed recently under the early childhood and graduation projects, which I will take more time to talk about during this presentation. So before I actually go into the slide, I'm just giving a global picture of BRAC. and BRAC Play Labs. Of course, BRAC globally is implementing quite a number of projects and programs in diverse areas, including health. We have the microfinance, then we have education, then we have agriculture and livelihood, and many more others. But of course, in the context of education, and to be specific, in the context of ECD, BRAC is also implementing this in a number of geographies. One of them is Uganda. We're having it in Tanzania, also, of course, in Bangladesh, Afghanistan, and a few more countries. But this presentation is going to be anchored more around what is happening in Uganda, and to be specific, around more what is happening in the refugee context. So we're having a 3-year project that is ending in March 2025. And this is called the Early Childhood and Programming in the Refugee Settlements, Uganda. This is a 2-generational project, but I'll spend most of this time talking about what is happening with the ECD. So we have 3 core objectives under this project. Our objective 1 is improve refugee and post-community children's holistic development through BRAC's humanitarian play labs, which fits more into this session that we're having right now. Then objective 2 of the project is support the families of refugee and post-community children living in ultra poverty through BRAC's ultra poor graduation program. And then our objective 3 is build the fields of ECD and graduation in humanitarian settings through capacity building, research, and advocacy. I'll slightly talk more about each of these objectives in the slides that will follow. So component 1, which is also objective 1, we targeted 4,050 children that we enrolled in our play labs. And of course, right now, the number is even much more. Like you could be aware, there's of course a lot of demand for education, especially ECD in the settlements. So we thought that we would be able to accommodate at least a maximum of 60 learners per class. But we found that in some areas, this was not possible. In some areas, we have numbers close to doubling of what we actually anticipated. And objective 2 of the program or of the project is, of course, we are targeting households for the children that we enroll in our play labs. For example, if we picked a child from home X, we also go ahead and look for the caretaker or for the mother, or especially the mother. And we see that we also support them through our UPG model. And under this, we provide social protection, through which we offer immediate relief for basic needs, to see that this parent or this caretaker is able to support, take care of the immediate needs, and also ensure they feed the child and be able to support some few basic needs that the child needs to excel at school. We also do livelihoods promotion. Under this, we majorly do provide a productive income generating activity through asset transfers. And also under Pillar 3, we provide financial inclusion, because we want to ensure that our participants, who are also our parents, the play labs, are able to pick up financially, start saving, and have their incomes grow. And then lastly is the pillar of social protection, whereby we ensure that our participants are well supported and have a conducive environment that can enable them to live in harmony as households, but also that they're able to support the well-being of their children. And of course, Pillar 3, which I didn't put here, is, Objective 3 is, of course, technical assistance. And under that, we identify non-BRAC ECD professionals, especially those operating in the humanitarian context. And we do a needs assessment. Based on the needs assessment, we go ahead and train them in areas where they feel they need to be trained. So our project approach is purely play-based learning. And of course, we believe that play is a critical tool to promote resiliency and establish a sense of normalcy in children's lives. Part of the approach is ultra pro graduation. I've just shown you how we do that. And then capacity building of parents. We are very deliberate on parenting, and this happens in a frequent manner. Of course, material development using low cost or, if possible, no cost materials. This is basically led by the parents themselves. Our staff simply create an enabling environment, mobilize them, set days, then the parents come and conduct material development. And we also encourage them, where possible, to engage the children in that they take ownership of the materials through learning how to do them, but also as a long-term strategy for sustainability. Of course, given that BRAC may not stay forever, at some point BRAC might have to leave the centers, so that's why right from the start we get them involved. Then, of course, I talked about technical assistance and then stakeholder engagement. Of course, we can't operate alone with stakeholders. We engage UNHCR, OPM, and other CBOs and INGOs that operate in the space to see that we create that collaborative environment. Capacity building of play leaders being our strong pillars on the ground, or our foot soldiers. We spend a lot of time training them. We have a curriculum that we take them through. And of course, we continue offering coaching and support through our field staff that are on the ground. This current project is having a component of research. We have an independent research partner who is IPA, Innovation for Poverty Action. So they are as well supporting us to do the research, in that we have independent results and we see how the dual generational is working through integrating HPLs and the UPG model. Then briefly, if I talk about the HPLs, you might ask yourself, what is this? This is a well-designed space where children have opportunities to play and explore. These opportunities are critical for their holistic development. I think this is, of course, well known to all of us on this call, that we value play as a strong component that can support children's holistic development. And of course, our HPOs are designed in a humanitarian setting. This is the refugee setting, with an aim of creating opportunities for play, for learners to play both from refugee and host communities. And also, of course, our genesis for Play Labs was begun in Bangladesh in 2017 during the Rohingya crisis, and eventually adopted in Uganda. You can actually Google more about the Rohingya crisis and how our intervention was adopted there. Of course, we aim at ensuring children's physical, cognitive, language, and communication and social emotional development through play in a joyful, creative, and child-friendly environment in the humanitarian space. This is really very critical, especially to children who are from broken families, to children who are from war-torn areas. So having them learning through play is the major strategy or tool that we can embrace to ensure that they learn in a joyful, creative, and child-friendly environment. But also we ensure that our play labs are contextualized. You will find that the play lab you find in a settlement, for example, in Rhino and Bepi, is not the same play lab that you're going to find in the mainstream, for example, in the central district of Uganda, where there is no war. Because we contextualize our play labs to reflect the cultural context of where these children came from, but also to reflect the local materials that are available in that given environment. Some of the objectives include providing children with opportunities to develop diverse skills through play in a joyful and gender transformative environment. And of course, also enhancing children's learning process, helping children to develop problem-solving skills, then helping children to develop a positive attitude, part of the additional objectives that we envision. We aim to prepare children for pre-primary and primary school. One of our targets is to see that by the time a child is finishing our play labs, they are really fit to join our primary one with ease. We also support that transition through provision of some materials, and we also plan in future to see that we follow up on these children, at least in primary one and primary two, to see that they settle in well, but also the teachers that are teaching them are able to receive them and support them to onboard in a well-phased manner. Otherwise, it may be a bit challenging. A child who has been learning under the play-based model for 3 years to jump into a primary one where a teacher is totally having a different approach of teaching, it of course creates challenges. Then also help children to develop positive and equitable concepts on gender. We are very deliberate on gender to see that the play leaders, even the stakeholders and the learners themselves appreciate gender differences and are able to support each other. So this picture shows you what I've been talking about. To my left, which might be your right, to my left, these are maize. No, they're called maize what? Maize cobs, which are really picked anywhere. These are picked on the roadside, in the community. So we pick them. Actually, parents pick them. Then, of course, for us as BRAC, we provide, for example, paint. They come and paint them and design them. At the back, those are wooden pieces. They pick woods, we cut them, we shade them, and they become learning materials. So this reflects what I talked about when I talked about low cost or no cost materials. What do you call them? The maize cobs are sitting on an old tire. So if you find old tires in the community, we also make use of them. We pick them, we paint them, or we cut them, and they become learning materials for our learners. To my right, that's one of our play leaders at one of the centers in the refugee settlement. This is Rhino, and she's demonstrating, actually this was an active lesson where she was teaching a learner using the locally made materials. You can see cups, saucepans, plants, so things that ideally happen in the daily lives of the children. We bring them to the play labs and we use them as teaching materials. This is another classroom where another play leader is instructing a lesson, also in one of the settlements. Usually that's how our children sit. They usually sit down, and we have our learning environment is designed in a way that there is a lot of incidental learning taking place, but also have a variety of materials that are happening that a teacher uses to demonstrate what they're teaching about. Our teaching has a lot of singing, learning, demonstrating, in that learners don't get bored, but also that they're able to memorize what they are being taught, because they can be able to touch and feel. How do we get to set up a play lab? So of course, we don't just bump into spaces. We usually have a very deliberate process. We usually start with a child survey because we need to know how many children are there. So we usually go to spaces where children are many and there are few partners. So if we find that at village X, the children are too many, but there are very few partners or there are no schools, then of course we conduct a child survey. Results are showing that we need to set up a school. We shall go ahead and set up a school. After the survey, we do mapping of sites. Then after that, we have inception meetings and workshops with key stakeholders from settlement, village, sub-county, district, and sometimes even regional level. Then we have community orientation meetings. From that, we select play leaders. How we get play leaders? Our play leaders are 100% picked from the community where the play lab is, because we want someone who speaks the local language, someone who understands the context of the village, of the community. So we advertise with clear requirements. Then of course they apply, and we work with the partners and the local leaders to select the best, whom we onboard and train. Then we construct the play labs. We finally recruit. We conduct a curriculum workshop, because we train them in a curriculum workshop for about it's a 5 days training. And after that, we conduct a basic training for play leaders. Then after that, we set up and decorate our play labs. They also form the center management committees, who are strong pillars in running these centers. And after we enroll learners and learning that's taking place. Some of the roles, if I can run through play leaders, one is play lab management, conducting and supporting play activities, also communication and building up relationships with learners and key stakeholders, materials collection and maintenance, and then material development workshops. Another picture of the play lab. Now this was during free play time. We have what we call free play time, a time when the teacher is not leading anything. Kids are left to interact with anything they want to interact with in the classroom. So this is a picture that shows you how that is done. A teacher just stands in a corner and watches on as learners are interacting with the different play materials that we have. I think you can see for yourself that no learner is idle. Every learner is engaged with something. So that shows you how tempting these materials are for learners to play with and learn. And then this is an example of one of the play labs that we constructed recently under this project in this in the host community in Terego district. So we aim to have our play labs look like this. This is one of the few that so far we have been able to set, but the long-term plan is to see that we create what we call the green play labs that embraces nature and environment. It's a long journey to go, but at least this is what we envision for all our play labs. I think I've already shown this picture, and these are locally made materials that reflect what happens in our environment that teachers pick and make with parents and use to teach our learners. So in summary, that is what I can share for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah and Joseph, for your presentations. I'm sure this was a lot to take in, so we just open up for questions now. We also had some time for a small group activity, which was essentially around enabling reflections on how you're connecting learnings from the session today to sort of your own programming. Tejaswini will drop those 3 questions that we had as part of the small group activity on chat. But essentially, we can use like the next 20 minutes or so to like ask any questions on the programs itself, but also use this space to share any reflections that you broadly had on whether this sort of like shifted your views on play-based learning, what kind of steps potentially do you think you might take in incorporating some elements of play in your own programming, and more importantly, are there areas where you would need support and where sort of this community can actually come in and help? So yeah, I think we can use the next 15 minutes or so just to ask questions or share reflections on these questions, or more broadly, sort of on your own experience and the session itself. We already have a hand up from Kanupriya, so I'll let her go in.
This is actually, it's not a question. It's more of just a thought that I had listening to the 2 presentations. You know, there's a lot of overlap. When you work in low resource settings, you don't have the luxury of going out and buying wooden blocks always. You know, you have to make do with what's available in the environment. What my experience has been is a lot of these settings, when you take still photos, they look amazing because, you know, you're able to work with the facilitators, the play lab leaders, whatever you call them, the teachers on the ground, because they're not trained teachers. And in a lot of low resource settings, we don't have the luxury of trained professionals working with our children. And I'm really sad to call it a luxury, but it really is in those settings. And so, you know, making the materials and populating the setting is almost the easiest part. And that's why I say when you take still photos, they look amazing. It's when you start going and doing videos is that you realize that the learning processes and the classroom activities and the teachers' practice in the classroom, because they're not trained teachers, becomes very limited very quickly. And so I really like Children on the Edges, you know, their guide that they're doing for teachers, breaking up the day into really simple sections of, okay, this is what you do for these 40 minutes. And of course, you know, learning stations in the literature on early years learning across the world, they are the done thing. If you want to encourage play-based learning, that's how you go about it. But, you know, somewhat of a scripted kind of a teacher guidebook works really well. And I've seen that in my prior work in India as well. So I think introducing the materials is the easy bit. But when you start looking at teacher practice and how those materials are being used and are they being fully utilized, like, you know, that little tire with all of those corn cobs. what are all the different activities you can do with them? So I'm thinking as a community, can we make really small little 20-second videos on all the different things you can do with corn cobs? Because really watching that in action, you don't need to reinvent it. You know, once you figure that out, everybody can use it. And it's not hard to do. You know, the water play. What are all the different things you can do with really cheap materials that are available in the environment? Sand play. What are all the different ways that you can do sand play? And the rub is really when you think about the early learning standards. And are you addressing all of the early learning standards for 3, 4, and 5-year-olds through these play activities? Because, you know, the social, emotional, and the connection with the adult, all of that, no matter what play you do, it will come. That's the nature of play. But how do you make sure at the end of the year, at the end of 2 years, those children have met their early learning standards for 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds? And that only happens when you're able to structure the play for the teacher, not for the child. Thank you.
Would anyone like to come in in response to that, or just build off of that, or just share a new reflection? I saw Dr. Navadi, I think, had your hand up.
Well, you know, I thought that last point was so important. You structure the play for the teacher. And showing more interaction. I mean, one of the things that struck me, these were fantastic presentations, both of them, was when children have free play, it doesn't mean there's not a teacher role. It's the interaction of the teacher during the free play where the actual learning is reinforced. So I think that's a major concept that we have to continue to get across.
I don't know how to raise my hand. Can I jump in there?
Go for it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Thank you so much for your comments there. It was really, really interesting. And it's something that we've worked a lot on in terms of how do we support teachers to structure that. And I think that's part of the learning stations, you know, and part of all the training we did around setting those up to be an invitation to play. You know, what areas are your children struggling with? For example, fine motor skills. So let's set up a learning station that's focused on fine motor skills, that's interesting and exciting for the children to want to come and play and engage with it. And I think that's and the element of training our teachers on how to know which ones they need out at which time to ensure that children are meeting all of their learning goals by the end of the year is something that we're really working on. And I love your idea of 20-second videos on using corn cobs. I'm definitely up for that. We've floated that idea many times. We do use video to train our teachers and to share ideas. So it's brilliant. We use WhatsApp, send little videos via WhatsApp to have a joint a global videos is a brilliant idea.
Thank you, Sarah. Ishwar, Priyanka, you can come in.
Hi, yeah, awesome. And first off, I'd like to say thank you so much to Sarah for just for that, and also mentioning the work that we've been doing together. I think having been to Chiaka and worked with their teacher trainers and seen their program, I think the thing that struck me the most, or always strikes me the most, is how incredible all of their facilitators are at leveraging and utilizing and creating their own resources out of what's around them. It's genuinely incredible to see when you're in Chiaka and you're at cluster groups of children on the edge. So just a sort of additional point on the amazing work that they do. I think on the point of structuring play for teachers, I think our experience of that has been amazing in the sense of initially when we started and we developed our own play-based curriculum and everything around that, our play-based curriculum was sort of a booklet sort of bound together about this big that structured sort of each day and the themes and all of that for our Matla mamas that we worked with. And the feedback that we got back from them was that it was just they just couldn't engage with it. They didn't understand how to work with that. And from there, we completely revamped our curriculum to one that was highly pictorial based, highly sort of very short sentences, very simple to understand, and laid out in a sort of, this is the first activity, this is the second activity, this is the third activity, and these are the learning sort of objectives and outcomes behind that. And to turn from one sort of bound together booklet of this big to one big binder file for each term. And while that means that it's a bit heavier, it's meant that our mamas are able to engage with our content now and our curriculum now, and are actually able to deliver it really effectively, because we structured it in a way that made sense to them after they give us our feedback. And that was a huge win for us, and a huge sort of learning moment for us of, one, how to effectively structure that, but two, the immense value that they have in continuing to iterate and learn about our program and be able to deliver that. So that was a huge one as well. And on the point of videos, I think as well, when it comes to our parenting program that we've developed now, we started off also with cards, and that was really difficult to work with, especially in the refugee camp setting as well, and in the rural communities we worked with. So now we've redone that to be video content as well. So our activities that the parents are engaging in are delivered through videos, demonstrative videos, as opposed to text-based anything. And that goes out to them on a weekly basis throughout the whole year. And the difference that we've seen in the parents and the caregivers' ability to understand that has really been interesting. And I mean, the most amazing thing to see for us is they're sending us videos back now of their sort of engagement with the children, which is on a personal level just great to see, but also on a level of understanding is amazing to see that. And so that's been, I think, really interesting, is the feedback that we're able to get directly from the caregivers and the mamas that we work with in the field has been so instrumental to informing how we're able to effectively deliver and create those play-based environments, both at home and in playgroups.
I think we have time for one final comment before we wrap up the session.
I'm curious about, like, because there is an emergency setting, but there could be related to many non-emergency setting questions as well. One of the organizations I've worked is the Citizens Foundation in 1,800 schools, and we tried to revamp the ECE, but it's a grandeur task of schools across very different contexts, and you try to standardize. I'm just very curious that when you scale, standardization comes as a very clickable, solution because of administrative reasons or otherwise. How have you navigated that question? Are you there right now? Are you not there right now? Or, like, in thinking from that lens of standardization or not?
Yeah.
I can try and answer that a little bit from our perspective. So I think there are elements of it that you can standardize and elements of it that you can't. So we have an implementation plan. So we are currently in the process of scaling up. So we are doubling our program in the next year, but within the same context. So we can use the same curriculum, we can use the same approach, because we're working with the same people groups in the same communities. I think if we were to try and pick our program up and implement it in a different context, then I think there are areas of standardization that we would use, which is speak to the communities first, find out what's happening on the ground first, engage with parents first, work with what you have. Don't bring something new in. Those areas of standardization are the same things that we would use in any context, but we would change things like the curriculum. We would change what play-based learning looks like, depending on what the culture and the community see play-based learning as. So I think the answer for me is some things you standardize and some things you don't.
I think that's I agree completely that that's been my experience too, as someone who's scaled to millions in a public program. But it's tricky which elements you standardize. And I think the cultural context and responding to that is the most critical step.
Awesome. I think unfortunately we'll have to end the session. I think the conversation was really very insightful, and I think I have a hard task of summarizing some of the very interesting points that you raised in today's call. But just before we end, we have a feedback poll that we'll just open up for you. This is really important because it'll help us sort of tweak the sessions for the future and make this more relevant and meaningful for you. As I think Tejaswini will just open up the feedback poll right now. In addition to that, I also, as you're filling that, I'll just quickly take you through the next session and sort of some of the steps on that. So I'll also very quickly share my screen. So I think in terms of the next session, our next session is going to be on the caregiver livelihood models. And the session post that is also going to be on that. So that is scheduled for the 26th of March at the same time. And then the following session, which will be part 2 of livelihood models for caregivers, will be on 16th April. We'll share more details about the session closer to the date. I think we're also going to be in the AFECN conference in Tanzania next week. So I know a couple of you are already there, and we've set up some time to meet with you. But in case you're coming or you know of people there who you think we should meet, please drop me a line and we'll make sure to make some of those meetings happen. But thank you so much for your time today and for really meaningfully engaging in this session and bringing in your own experiences and really making this idea of play-based learning come to life for all of us. So thank you so much for your engagement and time today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. See you.